Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going on an absolute epic journey. We're tracing an incredible biological alliance, the totally seamless, life-sustaining loop between your respiratory and circulatory systems. Think about it. A single, simple breath contains the invisible fuel that powers quite literally every cell in your body. So let's jump right in and look at exactly how it gets to where it needs to go.
Now you might be wondering, how does the food you eat actually become the energy that keeps you alive? Well, during digestion, carbohydrates are broken down into glucose and transported directly to your cells. But having glucose sitting around in your cells is kind of like having a car with a tank full of gasoline, but absolutely no spark plug. Our bodies absolutely require oxygen to break down that glucose and release the energy. And we get that crucial, life-saving spark through one continuous process, breathing.
Okay, let's dive into this. The formal biological term for this whole process is respiration, and it's basically the true engine of life. Inside every living cell, glucose and oxygen combine to produce energy, and they leave behind carbon dioxide and water as exhaust. And because this cellular engine literally never stops, we need a hyper-reliable, relentless supply chain to constantly deliver fresh oxygen and haul away the waste.
Which brings us to part one of our journey, the breath of life, getting oxygen in.
So that amazing supply chain begins right in your chest. Breathing is a highly mechanical process, and it really comes down to two binary actions, inhalation and exhalation. When you inhale, you pull in oxygen-rich air. Your lungs enlarge and your chest moves outward. Then, when you exhale, you expel the carbon dioxide-rich air, your lungs release, and your chest moves back inward. But the real unsung hero here, it's the diaphragm. It's this large, dome-shaped muscle sitting right below your lungs, separating your abdomen from your chest. When you breathe in, this muscle contracts and flattens out. It literally pulls air into the lungs, kind of like a rubber sheet being stretched downwards. And when you breathe out, it relaxes, pushing all that air right back out.
And here is a fantastic fact for you. Out of all the organs in the human body, the lungs are the only ones that can float on water. No way, right? It's a true testament to their incredibly soft, spongy, and delicate structure. You'll also notice if you look closely that your left lung is actually slightly smaller than your right. Why? Well, your body deliberately leaves extra space on the left side of your chest cavity just to make room for your heart.
Let's actually trace the literal, chronological pathway that air travels down into the body. First, it's drawn in through the nose, where these tiny little hairs act as a filter for dust and particles. From there, the air drops down through the pharynx and the larynx, right into the trachea, which you probably know as your windpipe. Deep down in your chest, that windpipe splits into two main tubes called bronchi, one for each lung. And once inside, they divide again and again and again into thousands of even smaller branching tubes called bronchioles.
Moving on to part two, the great gas exchange, the microscopic magic of the alveoli.
At the very end of all those tiny branching bronchioles lies the absolutely crucial transfer station. Each bronchiole ends in clusters of extremely small balloon-like structures called alveoli. Now, there are literally millions of these thin-walled air sacs, and they're tightly wrapped in this intricate net of blood vessels. Right here is where the microscopic magic of the respiratory system really happens. The oxygen is absorbed directly through those super thin walls and officially handed off into your bloodstream.
But remember, this gas exchange is definitely a two-way street. While the fresh oxygen enters your blood, carbon dioxide is passed right back into the alveoli so it can be exhaled. And here's something really surprising. Carbon dioxide isn't the only waste product we breathe out. Water is actually a byproduct of cellular respiration too. That means we lose a fairly massive amount of water every single day just by exhaling.
That brings us perfectly to part three, the body's highway system, our incredibly complex circulatory system.
Now that the oxygen is safely in the bloodstream, it needs a fast, reliable transportation network. Blood, which, fun fact, is actually considered a liquid tissue, carries all those vital nutrients and oxygen to your body and hauls the unwanted waste away. Just to give you a sense of scale, a newborn baby has only about one single cup of blood in its entire circulation. Just one cup. Of course, that volume scales up significantly as we grow.
And your blood definitely doesn't just slosh around randomly in there. It circulates in a highly organized, completely closed network of blood vessels. Check this out. If you took all the blood vessels in an adult human body and stretched them end to end, they would extend over 60,000 miles. That is more than twice the circumference of the entire Earth, literally packed inside of you. It's mind-boggling.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how this massive highway system works. It's categorized into 3 specific types of vessels. First, you have your arteries. These are thick-walled tubes that carry oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. Then you have veins, which are thin-walled vessels that carry carbon dioxide and waste back to the heart. And finally, connecting them together are the capillaries. These are extremely narrow, incredibly thin-walled vessels, and they shrink the highway down so the actual exchange of nutrients and waste can take place right at the cellular level.
And now, part 4, the mighty pump, also known as the human heart.
Because, to keep traffic flowing smoothly on a 60,000-mile highway, you're going to need a seriously relentless engine. Safely protected by your ribcage, the heart is actually surprisingly small. It's only about the size of your fist. But it is incredibly, unbelievably powerful. Pumping with its signature lub-dub sound, your heart beats approximately 115,000 times a day. And in doing so, it pushes a massive 7,570 liters of blood throughout your entire body.
If we look closely, the heart is basically a 4-room pump. It's divided into 4 distinct chambers. The 2 upper chambers are called the auricles. The right auricle receives the deoxygenated blood, while the left auricle gets the oxygenated blood. Right below them are the ventricles. The right ventricle actively pumps the deoxygenated blood out, and the left ventricle pumps the fresh, oxygen-rich blood out.
Let's go ahead and trace this continuous loop together. Impure deoxygenated blood enters the heart from the body through 2 massive veins, the superior vena cava from the upper body and the inferior vena cava from the lower body. They empty directly into the right auricle. From there, the blood drops down into the right ventricle, which then powerfully pumps it out to the lungs via the pulmonary artery for a very much needed fresh oxygen refill.
So the crucial point is to notice this really unique biological exception. Normally, as a rule, arteries carry oxygenated blood and veins carry deoxygenated blood. But this specific pathway between the heart and lungs completely breaks the rule. The pulmonary artery is literally the only artery in your entire body that carries deoxygenated blood. And once the lungs infuse that blood with fresh oxygen, it travels back to the heart through the pulmonary vein, which, you guessed it, is the only vein carrying oxygenated blood.
Now completing our epic journey. With a fresh supply of oxygen, the newly rich blood arrives via that pulmonary vein into the left auricle, and then drops straight into the left ventricle. From here, the left ventricle contracts with an immense amount of pressure, blasting this life-giving blood out into the aorta. The aorta is the absolute largest artery in your body, and it serves as the massive superhighway distributing that pure oxygen out to power every single organ, tissue, and cell you have.
From those microscopic hairs in your nose to the millions of tiny alveoli in your lungs, all the way to a fiercely pumping heart and 60,000 miles of blood vessels, your respiratory and circulatory systems are totally inextricably linked. They form this perfectly harmonized machine, effortlessly turning the air you breathe and the food you eat into the exact energy you need to thrive. Every single breath and heartbeat represents millions of cells going to work just to keep you moving forward. So what does this all mean? It means you're walking around with a biological masterpiece inside you. What incredible journey will your body take you on next?